This week, Agatha All Along completed its first season. These Marvel Disney Plus shows are adding up. So today I'm going to take all 15 Marvel Disney Plus TV shows and specials and throw them into a tier ranking. If you want to join in on the fun, I've got a link down below in the description where you can create your own Marvel Disney Plus show tier ranking. If you create one, take a screenshot of it, share it on your Instagram stories over on Twitter, tag me in it, and I will share some of your rankings as well. I mean, the fun part isn't just hearing your opinion in my voice, it's seeing all of our different perspectives on these TV shows. We all watch the same things and we have wildly different reactions to them and takeaways. That's the fun part. The world would be really boring if we agreed on all of that stuff. Keep that in mind as I go into this because, well, you're gonna disagree with me on pretty much all of these. Let's get started. We're gonna go through these in release order, so we're starting with WandaVision. Took me a little bit to warm up to this one because it was so wildly different from everything else in the MCU, where it's this kind of creative mix of sitcoms throughout the decades, Twilight Zone, and Marvel Studios, while being an exploration of family, trauma, grief. They can be very poignant.
But what is grief, if not love persevering?
And so at its best, this show could be pretty great. That its ability to copy different sitcoms throughout the 80s was really, really good. Even the theme songs that they did, the little ads that they threw in actually worked. Adding to that, you also kind of this kind of nice, it was really good at building intrigue, that you were kind of invested in what's going to happen. It was kind of the perfect show at the perfect time when it came out during COVID. Movies weren't coming out. And then you had this TV show that really kind of got you invested in guessing what was going to happen next on the show. And as I mentioned before, it has some very profound moments that are quite emotional.
I can't feel you.
In places that you don't expect to find that much emotion. Here's the problem with this one. It also set the pattern for these Marvel Disney Plus shows kind of going off the rails in the finale and being better in setup and build up than they are in the payoff. And in a lot of ways, this is one of the worst examples of that because the whole show's kind of built around intrigue and stuff like that. And by the end of it, it felt like a bait and switch where they teased some really big things and didn't actually deliver on it. They brought in an actor from the Fox XMen universe and paid it off with a sitcom and boner joke.
You're Ralph Boner?
Boner. And I thought my jokes were bad.
Really not very wise. Like, you create a scenario, you make an expectation that you don't remotely meet. That's where disappointment comes from. But there are other things along that as well. It also ends very kind of traditional, good guys with capes battling bad guys with capes. And its morality was so questionable with the way that it tries to, like, defend what Wanda's doing and make it like, you sacrificed so much. No, she took a town hostage. She was the villain. And it tries to, like, defend what she's doing while villainizing the people trying to stop her. Extraordinarily questionable morality there. Put it all together, I think it's a good show with great elements, held back by not so great things. So distinctly goes in the B category for me. Then we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This one was kind of the opposite for me on an expectation level than WandaVision. WandaVision was so different. I was like, I don't know what this is, so it's tough to be excited for it. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier was like, oh, cool. Two side characters I really enjoy, finally getting to be put in the lead, doing like a buddy cop show. I am so on board for this. This is totally my thing. And then the show that they delivered has that, but really made some bad, truly baffling choices throughout kind of its entire runtime, where when it's about our two guys in action, cool. When it's about them bickering and bantering, cool. The actual plot of the season, really underwhelming. And another kind of recurring problem in here is they want to have all these sympathetic villains. And so they're never commit to making their bad guy actually bad that would justify any of the choices that the characters are making. So the Flag Smashers, well, I mean, they were wronged. They're a lot of what they're doing is justified. They're not so bad after all. The politicians are really the bad guys. And this scenario where you have Bucky and Falcon doing crazy things where they won't team up with John Walker, but they're teaming up with Zemo. And like, it just doesn't add up in light of the nature of the threat of what the Flag Smashers are also actually doing. It gets bizarrely preachy multiple times. It's so on the nose with its social commentary about race in America and then politicians not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
There's like just no subtlety to it, and it doesn't make any sense in the context where Falcon would be one of the biggest celebrities on the planet, but his only mechanism for getting a business going is to take out a loan, and he can't get one because the bank teller doesn't realize what the blip meant, that he was disappeared. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. It's nonsense, but it's just there to make its bad social commentary. So, really frustrating show because on a genre level, it's very much my thing. These characters in here, I dig them. Even John Walker, a lot of people hated him. I thought that's what was so fun about him, is that he was kind of this, what if you had a Captain America that didn't have Steve Rogers' character? I dug all of that. And unfortunately, we also know that this show was dramatically changed due to COVID, where there was a plot line about a pandemic, a virus, a disease spreading, and they didn't think it was in good taste to put out a TV show with that plot line while people are locked at home for COVID. And so then they trimmed it out. So you end up with a story that feels like it's just lacking any stanks oomph to it. And I don't know if that would have fixed it, that this would be one of my favorites had they had a real villain plot in it rather than the show that we got. So for me, this one goes in the flawed category. I find it entirely watchable because I like the genre and the characters, but it is so flawed on a story and commentary level. That'll bring us to Loki, and on these shows where there's multiple seasons, we're all doing it as one discussion of the series. And with Loki, this is definitely one of the stronger shows where they kind of play out Loki's redemptive arc and kind of lean heavily into this idea of this very broken character that is constantly in search of his own identity and his purpose, his glorious purpose. And the TVA and everything that kind of goes on there helps him to discover what that looks like. And they were able to do a complete arc with the character from someone who's very selfish at the beginning, thinking about himself. And it goes on this long journey of him starting to make selfless choices, or not starting to, ultimately making a selfless choice. His glorious purpose is not for himself, not for his glory, but for the betterment of others. And other thing that works nicely for this one, and the thing that seems so different from everything else, is that it actually has a cohesive vision where they, both from an aesthetic design, the sets, the analog nature of the TVA, the nature of the humor, it's all cohesive and feels like there was a vision for what they were trying to do and they stuck with it. Some of that is that this is one of the only Marvel Studios projects that didn't have reshoots.
This is maybe the only show or movie in the history of Marvel that had zero additional photography.
And when you're able to get it right in the development process, film it without big issues, stick to your creative team, you end up with something that feels like it goes together. So for this one, I think because it does just complete a journey, has a vision, I'm going to put this one up in the great category. I always go a little bit back and forth on where to place it because there's, for like preference reasons, it's maybe not the most rewatchable for me, but that doesn't change that I just think it did a really good job at what it was going for. And I'll just cut to the chase on this one. I think What If is good. I have a lot of fun with these little what if scenarios. Some of it perhaps is that, like, I grew up reading the What If comics, And those were always some of my favorites of just like very much kind of a playing around with all of your toys in the toy box kind of situation and all these scenarios that don't make any sense. And, you know, when I was growing up, I would take my G.I. Joes apart and then I'd switch their body parts around and then put them back together. And so this kind of weird Frankenstein monster sort of stuff is what I enjoyed growing up. And now you have something that's officially that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So for me, I get a kick out of that. I also like that it's truly episodic with a little bit of a meta arc in it, where so many of these shows are essentially 4-hour movies broken up into 6 to 8 episodes. With this, each episode introduces a different scenario that introduces a conflict, builds on it, and resolves it by the end of it. I miss episodic television. I like that. So I have fun with this one. It's not like going for the highest heights or anything like that. I think by the end of the second season, it made some very foolish choices. It's not great, but it's definitely good. Closing out 2021, we have Hawkeye. Another one, I'm going to cut right to the chase on this one. I think that this show is good. Actually, this is going to be my favorite of the good category. And in a lot of ways, I think that this is the model that Disney should be looking at for most of their shows, where it's not trying to compete with movies. It's not trying to be this big, massive story. It's street level. At its core, it's about local organized crime and a costume. Like, that's what the plot is about. And that's what television can do well. Smaller scale stories where you spend time with the characters. Likewise, Hawkeye was always kind of the Avenger that got sidelined. And so they do a TV show that he's the star of it, and it's dealing with the choices that he made during the blip. That's interesting. He's himself, but he has regrets over what he did, and we see him as the family man. I really enjoy Kate Bishop as a character. Haley Steinfeld is a ton of fun.
Can I tell you a secret?
Please don't do this.
I was talking to an Avenger.
So throwing her in there worked great for me. Florence Pugh makes an appearance. All of those things, that's what I want these Marvel Disney Plus shows to be. Like this, all of this feels like, there it is. That's what you should do. But. Can't put it in the great category. Have to knock it back for the classic reason. It kind of loses it in the end. And I don't even hate the last episode or anything like that. There's some stuff in here that I actually really enjoy. But I think they just shot themselves in the foot treating Kingpin as a twist villain rather than having him throughout the entire season. So by the time you reveal Kingpin is in it, it's time to defeat him. So when you get there, it's like, what? The little girl beat Kingpin? I think that's a little dishonest when people try to present it as if, like, this little girl defeated Kingpin. He was hit by a car, and she blew him up with grenades. It's a little bit different. Like, he's beating the crap out of her. He's, like, literally tossing her around the room after he'd been hit by a car. And he's been shot, I think he was shot with an arrow, and he's blown up. It's not like the little girl beat him up in a fist fight or anything like that. But, there's a lot in here that I really enjoyed. Also, Tony Dalton, Lalo from Better Call Saul is in here. He's fantastic. I want him in everything. Show itself, wanted it to be great, but it does lose it in the like. Just feels like it so rushes the finale and it's unearned. There's so much in here that's like, yes, there it is, and then you did it again. Rush the finale. We're in 2022 with Moonlight. For me, this show was a massive disappointment where I was so excited to see the show as soon as they announced it and started, like, I was super familiar with Moon Knight before that, but it was like, Oscar Isaac is interested in it. Who's this character? So I start looking into him. Everything that everyone said made it sound like this is something that I would absolutely love. The trailers had a nice atmosphere to them. And even the first couple of episodes, I was like, okie dokie, wow, yeah, it's like we're doing a comic book story, but where our lead character doesn't know who he is. Like, what's going on with this? Oh, this is cool. And maybe the most of any of these shows, as it went along, like each episode, it kind of lost me a little bit more and a little bit more. And then the next to last episode, we're like literally in the afterlife.
Wow, that was weird.
And it's like, we're really going off the rails here. The main body of it goes from a superhero show into a globe-trotting archaeology show that's really deep into Egyptian mythology, lore, things like that. And then you get to the finale, and it literally turns into an episode of Power Rangers.
Go, go, Power Rangers!
And so it's like, what happened to this show? And it felt to me where you had a show that so many of these feel like they're averse to being a superhero show. That's why I liked Hawkeye. It was like, yeah, it's a superhero show. This one felt like it was avoiding that at all costs. Moon Knight is not in Moon Knight very often. Like, we have an episode of the Talking Hippo in the Afterlife. We've got all of this globe trotting and tombs and stuff like that. But Moon Knight just doing superhero stuff, it's not in there. So they just picked the totally wrong genre for the show. All that said, like, Oscar Isaac is great in it. There are some cool action set pieces in here. Like, it's not all bad. It's not that everything about it just was like, just something I didn't like, but it is deeply, deeply, deeply flawed. And I think they picked the totally wrong direction for it. So we're going deep into the flawed category here. There's a lot that worked for me, but by the end, just really left me going, why?
And you blew it! You blew it!
Then we've got Miss Marvel. This is another one I wasn't really excited for. Not super familiar with the character, and the trailer sold it as very kiddie. And in a certain sense, it is. And then the first 2 episodes actually really won me over. That Iman Vellani, I think, is super charming in the role. And the first 2 episodes seemed like they were doing kind of what Hawkeye did, which is it's going to be this kind of local, friendly neighborhood Miss Marvel kind of story. Street level, dealing with her school, her community, fighting crime, becoming in the spotlight. I'm just totally down for that. Really dug it. And then the 6th episode is also that. And there's also just like a fun style to it where there's like visual onomatopoeia, things like that, words appearing on the screen, stuff. It's like, oh, cool. I feel like this is a show where it's like they had 2 different plots that they were thinking about doing, and one of them was going to be the bad second season, and one of them was the really good first season, and they just mashed the bad second season into the middle of the first season. So they set up this really fun neighborhood story, and then they mash in this story about clandestines and traveling the world. Once again, we're globetrotting. Second show in a row where they go globetrotting, and it just ruins the show. And episodes 4 and 5 were like just bafflingly off the plot. Like, they completely lost the plot and head off to Pakistan in the show about a local community. And the next to last episode is literally turns into this serious drama. And it's like, what's going on here? So what happens with the show is that half the season was directed by the guys that directed Bad Boys for Life. The one that episodes that are youthful and the visual onomatopoeia, that's the Bad Boys for Life people. Then they brought in a lady that, this is what her Wikipedia page says, a Pakistani Canadian journalist, filmmaker, and activist known for her work in films that highlight gender inequality against women. Almost all of her filmography is doing documentaries. And then she does 2 episodes of Miss Marvel. And so suddenly we transport back into the 1940s, learning about incredibly important events in the history of India and Pakistan. But it's like, we're like way off, like literally on the other side of the world, learning about history and tying into all these different things. Like, and the tone is different. It's a new plot. It's new characters. The humor, the fun is gone. Then we resolve that. In episode 6, we go back and it's about a high school, like, invasion and stuff like that. Like, very weird. And I think there's an obvious flaw there of these 2 director teams not on the same page whatsoever. put it all together, I still thought it was good because I just found the character and the environment in the good episodes so charming. I just have no clue why on earth they threw in the clandestines and globetrotting into the show. Then we have I Am Groot. This is a tough one to place because they're just cute shorts. They're like, oh, that was charming. Oh, that was funny. I think it fully accomplishes what it's going for. Do I ever just sit around like, let me throw those on? No. Does my 6-year-old ask to watch them? Like when the logo appears on Disney Plus, does she have to watch it? Sure. Do I just put them on? No. Does it matter the grander plot? Is there a story here? Character? No. I think they've even said they're not canon. Doesn't really matter whether they are or they aren't. We're just going to throw this one in the not for me category. I don't really know what it plays. Like what they're going for, they do a great job at it. But it's so categorically different from everything else on here, kind of needs to be thrown into its own little basket. That'll bring us to She-Hulk, the show that lit the internet on fire with flaming hot debates over everything related to it. Let's cut right to the chase. Let's go into the bottom category. What on earth are we doing here? For me, I think that this show was misguided, a miscalculation that just hurt the MCU and the fan base, where it violated things of the rules of the universe that it makes it difficult to take the universe seriously when they don't. And it did something that divided the audience in a very unhealthy way. Going back to the making of Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr. described it as there was a feeling in making Iron Man of taking the subject matter seriously, not taking ourselves seriously. And then Kevin Feige phrased it this way.
It's the balance, right, between poking fun at it or taking the piss out of a moment, but also taking it seriously.
And all of that, I feel, was totally broken by She-Hulk, where they took something that we took these stories seriously, this universe seriously. There's silly elements, but we took it seriously, and they treated it entirely as a joke. And everything is meant to be laughs, and so it's just kind of undermining everything with the way that it was done. And the creators openly stated they wrote elements of the show openly to troll the audience, to troll MCU fans. I just don't think that's particularly wise. You get into the final episode and it goes so far into fourth wall breaking that in your serious universe, now we're literally having a robot named Kevin.
Hello, Jennifer.
Kevin?
I just don't see the wisdom in this. Of course, there's the cringe moments as well, but that's all like, what you find funny, what I find funny, we can debate that. So I think it's pretty cringe to do that Meg's twerking with Megan Thee Stallion.
He almost tasted that. Num 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 num, eat it up.
Are you kidding me? But like, that's not the grander issue here. It's just doing something that takes so much of it so unseriously. But going back to that original statement of, we take the subject matter seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. This show is the opposite, where it doesn't take the MCU seriously, but it took itself seriously. Where in the first episode, you have She-Hulk explaining to Hulk how she's a victim because she's a woman, and how he doesn't understand because he's a man, when it's like you're talking to a guy that literally lived on an island in fear and tried to kill himself and was abused, like all this stuff that's like, but you're taking yourself seriously of like actually like lecturing towards the audience, but taking the universe not seriously. So I think it's just a violation of what the MCU's always stood for. So for me, this one goes all the way at the bottom. Then we have Werewolf by Night. I was lucky enough to actually be at the world premiere of this. It was a secret screening at Fantastic Fest a couple years ago. We sat down, didn't know what we were going to be watching, and found out, surprise, we're watching Werewolf by Night, the new MCU special, which actually got a really bad response in the room because people go to Fantastic Fest to avoid Disney. And so, surprise, we got a Disney thing for you. Here's the thing from the most popular franchise. People in the room were not happy and they just walked out. Kind of interesting the way that played out. As for the special itself, I dug it. That it had like this fun, different tone to it, but it was enough of kind of a pocket universe that you could have fun with it without having to overthink its ties to the grander MCU. It had a clear story that it conflict, this scenario that we put the characters in that plays out throughout the story. And there's some characters in here I'd love to have a little bit more fun with in the world of the MCU that we're kind of hoping that, maybe they show up in Blade or whatever they're going to do with some of these other ones. No, it looks like we're never going to see them ever again, but I really dug it. So we'll throw this one in the good category. Then we get another special, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Cut right to the chase on this one. I had an absolute blast with this thing. My family loves it. We watch it around the whole year, so for what it's going for, it's great. It's not trying to be the most ambitious MCU project or anything like that. It's trying to be lighthearted, family fun.
You're coming with us as a Christmas present.
And that's exactly what it accomplished. Beyond that, this made me like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 more. As someone that has historically been critical of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, one of the key things I pointed to was the relationship between Drax and Mantis, and this whole special is about fleshing that relationship out and showing both sides to it, balancing it out a little bit more, so that I, and retroactively, like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 more. It takes a joke from the first movie about Kevin Bacon, fully plays that out.
We're looking for the legendary Kevin Bacon.
We're looking for the legendary Kevin Bacon.
There's some musical numbers, there's character arcs, there's important revelations about characters in there, and all of it in under 45 minutes. Like, it's incredibly efficient, it's entertaining, it's heartfelt.
Something special he will never forget.
What about someone special?
Once again, it's not trying to be great, like magnificent cinema. It's supposed to be a holiday special, and at that, it was wildly successful. It goes up in the great category. Then we have Secret Invasion, a TV show many of us, for many different reasons, were very excited to check out, where they're taking a iconic, classic comic book run and pulling it into the MCU as a TV show where there's a lot of time to kind of build out the plot, make it this big, epic paranoia story. Nick Fury finally getting to be the lead of a project. He's been around since the post-credit scene in Iron Man. He's been the side character. Finally, he gets to take the lead. We're following up whatever was teased at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home. So much here to be excited about. We're doing a paranoid thriller. And, while it doesn't seem like in any way it's like Winter Soldier, it has a little bit of that flavor to it with the politics and a more serious tone. And for me, the first couple episodes, I was like, okay, they're kind of doing it. They're going for it. I'm digging it. And like with every episode, it was like, oh no, this isn't very good. This is not, it feels like we're not going anywhere. We're not making any traction. We're spending all the time in the wrong places. Characters are dying and it feels so inconsequential and lacking the emotional oomph it should have. And then you move into the finale, it's just flat out bad.
Worst ending ever.
Once again, in that way where it feels like we're breaking the universe, that the writers didn't know what they were doing. They didn't stop to think about the ramifications of what they're doing. So they introduced this character with Gaia or something like that, that has all of the Avengers and Thanos' power. They introduced the most powerful character on planet Earth, and you don't even know her name. It's like this afterthought. Oh, but we just injected her with everybody's powers, and it looks ridiculous. Where little Emilia Clarke with Dave Bautista's Drax arm. It looks stupid, but it's unsatisfying. It didn't feel earned. It's not Nick Fury being smart and winning. Like, it just turns into boss fight at the end. Boss fight. We accidentally created the most powerful character, and she's not interesting. No one cares about her, and it feels so inconsequential to everything. So just so horribly written show that failed to adapt its source material. Of course, we're going down in the what on earth are we doing here? Just such a waste on every single level. And this is another one where it's well known that there were serious issues during production where they had to reshoot basically the entire show, and you watch it And that's what it feels like. It's choppy. It's all over the place. Things don't add up. Things come out of nowhere. And just another victim of the Marvel Parliament microwaving a script on the front end and then trying to fix it on the back end with rewrites and reshoots and new writers. And it was an utter waste of all of the great tools at their disposal, all the resources at their disposal. That'll bring us to this year with Echo. And I have so many mixed feelings just on the concept of this show. Where on the one hand, we're doing a spinoff of the side henchmen from Hawkeye that, I mean, I guess she was a fun henchman. That didn't scream like I want to really do a whole series about her, but say spin off side henchman into her own show. That's pretty weird in my book. And that seems like perfect example of Disney Plus just being desperate for content and giving everybody a show, but it doesn't make sense who they're giving shows to. Flip side to it, it feels like the scope size of a TV show where it's like she shows up in the small town and gets involved in the underground crime of everything that take place there. That feels like a TV show, the type of TV show that I watch, whether Reacher or this one from like 10 years back called Banshee that Cody Leach has been recommending to me. And I finally watched it this year and it's great. But like the mysterious person shows up in the small town and gets involved in everything. I like those kinds of shows. So when the show got going, it's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff in here I actually kind of dig. I like the size of it. I like that it's local. There's some fights in here that are kind of fun. And then it's elevated because she's tied to Kingpin tied to Daredevil. So we even get a little bit of Daredevil in there. Literally just a pinch of Daredevil in there. There's some fun choreography. But once again, it's a show that has things in it. It was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And on the other hand, it by the end of it, you're like, oh, you wasted it again. You dropped the ball once again on one of these shows, and it got so weird in the finale. Like there's some fun stuff when Kingpin starts really getting involved in the dialogue. Okay, I'm digging it. I like Kingpin. Vince D'Onofrio, fantastic. And then the finale just goes off the rails and turns into this whole other thing. Brings in fantastical elements into a show where its strong point was that it was grounded. And then it never, while the vibe of it is my sort of show, it never convinced me that Echo was a strong enough character to lead her own show. So gotta get to the end of it. Genre-wise, it's my kind of thing. There's some stuff sprinkled on it that I really enjoyed, but overall, definitely a very flawed show. Just enough, like it is for me. So it's not in that category, and it's not full-blown what on earth are we doing besides greenlighting a show for Echo. But genre lifts it up just enough, but is really flawed. Then we've got another animated show, X-Men 97. This is a tricky one. I debated whether I should include this one along with I Am Groot because this one is not in the MCU. But it is from Marvel Studios. So what do you do with that? As long as I'm talking about everything, I might as well talk about everything. Who cares? But I am the perfect age to have watched X-Men the animated series when it originally ran. That on Saturdays, I'd wake up and I'd watch X-Men the animated series, and then my sister and I would hop on our bikes and ride up to the comic shop a mile or two away from our house. It was actually called Sean's Comics, except he misspelled his name and spelled it S-H-A-W-N. But that's what I did when I believe the 5th grade when this show came out. And so it's a very big part of my childhood that I was very fond of. It was essentially my on-ramp in for the X-Men. All of my friends had the X-Men toys and memories, all that fun stuff. So when they announced that we're going to do a continuation season, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Will they be able to pull it off? Like, will it work? Will they capture the vibe for it? And I think they did it. They did a fantastic job of continuing the vibe, the pacing of that show. And even in the ways in which it like has really dark elements in it, the way that it's serialized, even the way that the stories are done in a way that just kind of drops you into the middle of it and moves very quickly. It doesn't feel the need to water it down or over explain everything. It's just like, we're going to go for it. We're going to tell our story. And just even like it's very there's a lot of exposition dumping, but it's almost like the charm of the show of like people standing there like, let's explain this really complicated comic book lore that was 4 issues of a comic book. We have to explain it in 3 sentences so we can move the plot forward. Like, I kind of love that about this show, and it's able to get away with it. And likewise, it is able to build to this big crescendo in the back half of it where characters die. Characters are horribly maimed. Like, there's actual stakes. What happens matters. Choices have consequences. So for me, as the person that grew up watching the original show and then picked this one back up, we're going to throw this one way up in the great category. You did it. You pulled it off. Well done. I was very skeptical of what Disney Plus was able to do because not a disappointment. We've talked about it in this video. X-Men 97 did not disappoint. And finally, we've made it to Agatha All Along, the show that came to a conclusion just a couple days ago. And this one is another one that's it's pretty strange to me, pretty odd to me. In my initial discussions about it, a lot of it's pretty similar to the way I talked about WandaVision at the beginning, where with both shows, I didn't get what they were going for, and it felt like there was too big of a gap between the established MCU style and genre and what WandaVision and Agatha had to offer. And in the case of WandaVision, it won me over. With Agatha, it never really won me over. And at the end of the day, just got to say, it's just not for me. That I've said this many times, but if I saw a trailer for Agatha, if it didn't say Marvel Television at the beginning, if it didn't say Marvel Studios, if it wasn't part of the MCU, I just wouldn't even watch the trailer. I wouldn't watch the show. It's just not for me. And so like a Marvel show about witches and they're going down the road, it's just not for me. It's not subject matter that in no level do I go, oh, this is cool. This is fun. None of it is stuff I connected with. But even kind of beyond that, I think it had a little bit of pretty dramatic tonal and vibe shifting. Like episode 1 is kind of WandaVision-y, except with a cop procedural. And then where it's a singing witch show. And then was it episode 5 where we get the backstory and do a flashback and it's like a high school drama. And then we're back to witch show. There's a kind of total whiplash in there. And then the meat of it was just too cyclical for me on something that just wasn't interesting to me. They're going down the road. They get to a place. They face a trial. Someone dies. There's a twist ending. And then the final reveals of the end of it with Billy and Agatha's roles in the creation of the road. I felt like it was a bait and switch of like, oh, so this wasn't going anywhere this whole time. Like, okay, got me, twist, but you sold me on the journey to the end of this. And the journey to the end of this is not a satisfying answer. It just like the humor of it, the vibe of it, none of it was something I resonated with. And that's strange. 15 years into the MCU. To have things come out where everything for the first 3 phases, it was like this sci-fi action thing that's like very much my thing. If you build a brand, though, that is one thing here, and then you do a thing outside of that, it is confusing to the people that have been around from the beginning as to why you're doing things outside of it. But all that to say, as I've said multiple times, not for me. As you look at our final results on here, notice I don't think there's anything S tier. I don't think, there's no shows on here that I think are fantastic. Even the ones that I think they're in the great category, I think they're great at what they're going for, but they're not great in the same sense when I say an MCU movie is great, and they're certainly not S tier in the way that, like, Endgame, Infinity War, wow! For you guys, Winter Soldier! I'd say Winter Soldier is great. You guys say it's S tier. Like, none of them are that to me. None of these are that to me. So I don't think Disney Plus has knocked it out of the park yet. I don't think they've cracked the code on how to do fantastic television with Marvel just yet. That's my take on it. You can create your own at the link down below in the description. Remember, if you screenshot it, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me. I'll share some of those likewise over on Twitter. Hey, check out some of my other videos somewhere around here. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.